Hey everybody, it's David Pingree. We are out here at Milestone Raceway today, finishing up a dialed in on the 2019 KTM 350 SXF. What a really fun bike. If you've picked one of these up, you know, you're maybe a vet guy, somebody racing an age group class, or just someone that doesn't do much racing but likes to ride, or maybe you're winging it in the 450 class on this thing. Either way, it's a really fun, really cool bike. Real nice compromise between a 250, which might not be enough power for you, and a 450, which is a little bit too much. So I really enjoy riding this bike, and I'll give you some of the settings we landed on, some tips to make this thing work really well. As far as the engine goes, it's just a really broad, easy to ride engine. Power is super broad, from really good throttle response and roll on to a crazy amount of over rev. Ran through all the maps and the traction control in this thing, and I think because it is such a broad, mellow power delivery, I like map 2, the aggressive map. That's definitely personal preference, but I would try it. And if you feel like at times it can be too much, throw the traction control on. That was my, you know, if this is my bike, I'm running the map 2 all the time, and then I'd be on and off the traction control depending on track conditions. If it's really sticky and tacky, I could even leave it on, but it doesn't do as much. But anytime you get some shiny, slick base, that thing helps a lot. Stock gearing, I don't think anyone should really have to mess with this gearing. There's enough torque to pull it. It pulls really long between gears. I think they did an awesome job finding a good setting on this thing. So not a whole lot to change on this thing in terms of engine and the power plant making it go. One thing, and I mentioned this on our other bikes as well, get the short throw cam for the throttle tube. The stock one is just too long. It's too hard to get the thing turned all the way around to full stop. When you order a grip kit from KTM's Hard Parts catalog, they will come with 3 different cams: a 2-stroke cam, a standard cam, and a short throw cam. Put the short throw one in. You can thank me later. As far as the suspension goes, their recommendation is always 105 millimeters of sag on their shock, and I stuck with that. I made very few changes on this bike. It just wasn't a whole lot to do. 2 clicks softer on my low speed, 2 clicks softer on my fork on the compression, and I ran the standard pressure that they recommended, which is 10.4 bar. And truly, I was pretty happy with it. You know, I got this thing to feel like it would absorb any little chop I had, still absorb big landings. I did find that any change you make to pressure, I mean, 1 PSI or 0.1 bar or whatever, you can feel it. I mean, it is a significant change. And the same with these compression clickers. 1 click and you're like, oh man, that's quite a bit softer or firmer, depending on which way you go. So figure out what it is you like, and I think you can get this fork to where you're down to a pressure that you always set it at, and then like a click or 2 either way. You know, I could probably, if there was tracks with bigger bumps and downhills, I'd go in 1 click on my compression, and then if I'm at you know, a flat track with no elevation change or more hard-based dirt, I'd go to the softer setting. And it almost feels like 2 completely different forks. That's how significant one change is. But I think it does a pretty good job. If someone said, hey, I want to throw some money at the suspension, what's the best thing I can do? I would still say get rid of this air fork. I would say go to a spring conversion kit. I would say order the WP cone valve fork. Either of those would be, I think, a step above what this is. As far as air forks go, this one works pretty well, but it's still tough to get that perfect, consistent feel that a spring fork could give you, my opinion. That was it on the suspension. The shock actually works great, and like I said, I made a couple little clicker changes, but that's going to be, at 170 pounds, that's going to be different with someone that's 200 pounds. Just find what's comfortable to you. But I'm just telling you, the standard setting, they did a really great job. Casey Lytle and the boys that did the development on this thing, they really landed in a good place with settings. A couple tips that I will tell you: this headset comes tight, and it'll loosen up enough that at times this gets really loose, and it'll just fall to the side and rattle, and that gives your front end a really nervous feel. Loosen these top clamp bolts on your triple clamp and tighten up that headset, and just give yourself a little bit of resistance there, and it'll really change the front end of your bike if it feels nervous. Try that. That was a big change for me. Also, they recommend always keeping an eye on your spokes and sprocket bolts. Per KTM, that's sort of the standard 2 things that they see come loose when people buy these and take them home. If you're gonna dump some cash into it, I always get asked this, hey man, if you were gonna spend some money on something to make it better, what would you do? I think on this bike, the two things I would do is put good race fuel in it and take it to someone to have an ignition or some mapping put in it. I think those two things are probably the most efficient use of your money. This exhaust system's pretty good. Maybe a slip-on muffler if you really wanted to change the look of it, but this thing is really strong right out of the box. Everything works really well. My recommendation in terms of performance would be to do something with that fork. But again, it's fine the way it is for 99% of the people out there, but people still like to spend money and make their bikes better. So that would be my direction to look. Other than that, gearing is good, brakes, clutch. I had absolutely no issues with this bike. I can go out and ride this thing all day. I loved it. They're available in your KTM dealers right now. Check them out, and thank you for watching Dialed In.